Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And you can always follow me on Twitter at Porkins Policy. You can find all of my work either on RSS, on YouTube, on iTunes as well, and of course rebroadcast later on in the week on Friday nights on a host of other stations. Before we get into today's episode, which I'm very excited to do today, it's one I've been looking forward to for a while, I just wanted to quickly thank both Will and Chalentless, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, for recently becoming subscribers to Porkins Policy Radio. Of course, if you want to support me, you can always do that by going to patreon.com/Pierce Redmond. And of course, if you want to support American Freedom Radio, you can always go to the donate button on AFR's website or, of course, on Patreon as well. Quickly, I mentioned, I think it was in last week's show, that I will be away towards the end of August. So, but rest assured, the PPR bonus podcast will be up and available. I'm planning on recording that later this week, I believe. We should be talking with a good friend of the show, Chuck Ocelli, all about the upcoming Lancer conference. So stay tuned for that. Of course, if you want to become a subscriber and listen to that, then go to patreon.com /Pierce Redmond. But I am joined by a very special guest, someone who joined us all the way back on episode 72 when we discussed the latest season of South Park, and that is my sister, Emma Redmond. Emma, how are you?
Hi, good.
Good, excellent. Well, Emma, we're going to be discussing one of our other favorite television shows, and that is Orphan Black. But before we get into that,
I'm so excited.
I know, as am I. But Emma, before we get into that, remind the listeners a little bit, who is Emma Redmond? What do you do? What are you all about?
I am an artist. I'm a textile mixed media artist in Brooklyn, and I teach as well. And I'm a big TV fan. Big TV fan.
No, absolutely. And as I said, Orphan Black is a show that Emma and I have been obsessed with since season 1. I think I got into it just after the first season wrapped up, and you insisted that I watch it. I think we watched it in like a day or two, the whole first season. And then we've been following it basically episode by episode since it came out. It just wrapped up after 5 years. It just finished the 5th season. And just to get it out of the way, it's a co-production between BBC America and Space, which is a Canadian television show. It takes place in Canada. It's created by Graham Manson and John Fawcett, and it stars the amazing Tatiana Maslany, who we'll get to in a few minutes, who's just a phenomenal actor. I mean, just really hands down one of the best out there right now. And as I said, we've been huge fans of it. So before we kind of dive into it, a couple things. This is, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about the final season, but the whole series as a whole. So if you have not seen the show, you might want to go out and watch it. It is certainly worth watching, but, keep in mind we're going to be, spoilers for everything. And also, something that Emma and I were talking about off air. before we started the show. But obviously, both of us are aware of what's going on, or what just happened in Charlottesville, and this growing tide of Nazi scumbags that have surfaced in the past couple of days. But obviously they've been around for quite some time now. And we're not really going to be touching on that. I understand that that's like in the news, and I do cover current events when things like this happen. But Emma and I decided that we would prefer to talk about something a bit more upbeat, and kind of give everybody a break from all this horrible shit going on. Again, though, I will be talking about this in some detail, and that episode will probably be up next Tuesday. I'm going to be talking again with a good friend, Chuck Ocelli, discussing all of this. We might get another guest in as well. Maybe we might try and squeeze in Robbie Martin. But we're not going to be discussing that. Instead, we're going to be discussing our favorite show, Orphan Black. And for those who are unaware, the series essentially begins with this character, Sarah Manning, who's I guess she's a bit of a con artist, a confidence trickster.
She's not a necessarily likable person, or she's not someone that you really want to be around.
She's sort of a rough around the edges lady who returns to Toronto after kind of disappearing and leaving her young daughter in the care of her stepmother, Siobhan, or Mrs. S. Foster mother, yeah. Basically she returns to Toronto, and she's waiting on a train platform for her train, and she sees a well-dressed woman walking towards the edge of the platform. She takes off her high heels, she folds her jacket and puts it on her bag, and she begins to walk right up to the edge, and she then turns and looks at Sarah, and it is her double. It is what we find out is her clone. And this other character, Beth, jumps in front of the train, and Sarah freaks out, steals her bag, and essentially takes on her life. And through that series of events, she begins to unravel this large conspiracy involving the cloning of multiple versions of herself. And the show is essentially a science fiction conspiracy thriller about Sarah and her other clones, or her sisters, trying to unravel the mystery as to who's cloning them, who's controlling them, what's this all about. We're introduced to several different factions that are involved in the cloning. So there's a private corporation called Dyad, which is in charge of the Leda clones, which are the female clones. There is a military faction within the U.S. Army that's running a counter or a parallel cloning program involving male clones, which are codenamed Castor. Now, they're all essentially under the umbrella of a transhumanist organization that refers to itself as Neolution, and they are kind of pulling the strings. And of course, we find out that this is not even just about cloning, but essentially life extension and the quest for godhood or immortality. There's another faction called the Proletheans, which we'll probably get into, which are this cult-like sort of Christian religious cult that's also very involved in science, and they want to run the cloning operation, and they also want to achieve godhood. And there are numerous characters, but we should also just mention that, of course, Tatiana Maslany, people might be familiar. She plays all of these different clones, and she plays, Emma, like 7 or 8 different versions?
She plays about, I want to say, mainly there are 4 clones, like 4 or 5 main clones, but she's probably played at least 7 or at least 10 maybe, I would say, in the entire series. And the crazy thing is she is just incredible. She really is, makes me respect the art of acting on such a deep level. You wouldn't even really know that. You would think that there's different actresses playing all of these different characters. They even physically feel different, look different. It's incredible watching her.
No, it is. I mean, if any listeners out there who have seen the show will know this, but if you just start watching, you'll get into the series and you'll wish, oh, you know, I wish that this character got to have a scene with Tatiana Maslany or something, and then you forget and you realize, no, of course they have scenes every 5 minutes, but that's how good she is at playing these different clones. And the four main ones are, of course, Sarah, who's our main character. Then there's her scientist sister clone, Cosima. There's Allison, who is a suburban
my favorite
housewife.
clone.
And then there's Helena, who's a sort of semi-psychotic Ukrainian assassin clone who, of course, you know, later becomes intimately involved with them.
It's fair to say she starts out pretty psychotic. She is a trained serial killer.
Yeah, she's nuts. And then, of course, through a series of events becomes very close with all of the sisters. And aside from that, there's also Rachel, who's the evil clone, who we'll get to later. But, you know, we would be kind of foolish to try and describe this entire series, because it is very complex. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of twists and turns. So we'll really be kind of talking as if everyone is semi-familiar with this. And we're going to be, as I said, we're going to be mainly focusing on the 5th season, which just wrapped up a few weeks ago. I think it was, last week was the final episode. But Emma, I guess, yeah, first things first, because this is, you know, we're both you know, members of Clone Club, which is the sort of the fan base of Orphan Black. Who is your favorite clone?
Allison. Totally Allison. I think she's the funniest. I also love Crystal, who's this sort of just awful basic bitch, like makeup guru YouTuber clone, she's a great line where she says, I'm not smart, but I'm not totally stupid, which is just a great line. I love her. But I think Allison is this sort of uptight, high-strung soccer mom that loves show tunes. She's also a drug dealer, who's just crazy. Like, I think that she is the clone that, I think is just the most, you never really know what's going to come out of her. And I don't think she does either. And I love her craft room. I love her husband, Donnie, too. Amazing craft room. And I love her relationship with her kind of idiot husband. She just really, really, I think, like, shines in a lot of episodes.
No, I mean, it's sort of like a Sophie's choice trying for me to pick a favorite clone, because I actually like love all of them. So, you know, I always sort of go back and forth. For a while it was Allison, and she still is probably one of my favorites. But I've also, you know, I love Helena. But oddly enough, a clone that I didn't like at first, which is the lesbian dreadlock Cosima, I now love. And Cosima is generally now like my favorite clone, or my go-to clone. She's the one I feel like if I had to hang out with one of the clones, it would definitely be Cosima. Because she, like, you know, smokes weed and likes to party. You know, and she's into, like, nerdy comics and
you don't want to pop pills in Bailey Downs with Allison?
I don't know. I think Allison would just kind of freak me out a little bit, you know? I feel like she's so intense, whereas Cosima is definitely a bit more laid back. And I don't know, there's just something about Cosima. She, like, really grew on me. And then, of course, my other favorite clone, which might be a bit controversial in the Orphan Black community, is Rachel, who is the evil clone, who is she's the only clone that is raised to be self-aware that she was a clone by, you know, when she was like 5 years old. And she's essentially raised by this very terrifying multinational corporation called Dyad, which is in charge of the female line of the human cloning project. And she is evil, and she goes through a long, complex arc that we'll get to later. But I do love Rachel, and I think she, especially in this season, just really kind of like, I don't know, struck me as just like an amazing character. But So we've gotten our favorite clones out of the way. What did you think of this final season? Because it's a little bit different from the other seasons. And what did you think of the finale?
I really loved the finale. I cried. I was very sleep deprived, granted, when I watched it last night. But I really liked it. I thought it was, I kept on, I remember the first episode I watched, like, how are they going to wrap this all up? And I think that they did a really beautiful job of it, where it wasn't, and everything wasn't neatly put together. There's still a lot of very big questions I had, but I thought that the way that they did it, just sort of focusing on, which a lot of the show focuses on the sisterhood of these women, just sort of focusing on that towards the end, I thought was really amazing. And I just love, like, Helena, too, is one of my other favorite clones. She is also just amazing, and she, I think, had some of the funniest lines in this last episode.
Talking about her babies eating sand.
Eating sand. Every time I turn around, he's eating sand, and, like, she names them orange and purple. But somehow I kind of was like, she's not a bad mom. Like, she doesn't actually seem like she's doing that bad. Like, she seems like she's kind of good at it, but, like, she's such a crazy person. I really liked it. No,
go ahead, Emma.
I think that this season, I think, introduced a sort of kind of trying to, I think that's a problem that a lot of shows have when they're ending, when they're trying to wrap up everything and kind of tie everything together. And I think it did it pretty well. Granted that there are so many different facets of the universe they've created, and there's all of these different sort of fighting factions, fighting for power and people, that I thought that they did it really well. I really liked it. I really loved Rachel's sort of arc. I think that hers is really the main tragedy in the show. I think a lot of, like, what I felt in this entire season is, like, so much of the past seasons have been the horror of these women's lives, but a lot of reality, I felt like Rachel, especially this season, I was like, she's really the one that I think I felt the most for her towards the end. And sort of the most, like, she really, she has nothing. But I guess we can talk about that later.
No, and we'll get to that, because I think that, again, the evolution of Rachel is in a lot of ways reflects some of the overarching themes throughout the whole series, and I think that's why Rachel is such an important, integral part. And I nearly forgotten that she's in it from the very beginning. For some reason in my head, I sort of thought she was like a newer character, and then I was rewatching some of the first season, and I realized, oh no, she's always been there. But she's so evil, you kind of forget about her. And no, I agree too. I loved this season. I thought that for a final season of a TV show, it did more than I thought it would. I thought there would be more loose ends. I thought there would be not enough time, or it would be too kind of depressing an ending. I thought this was a really great sort of balance between super sad. Obviously, the death of Siobhan is huge. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. But that was a really kind of I had to, like, pause the show when that happened. And then I will say, I think my favorite scene in the entire series was in the final episode of the 5th season. And a fun fact, this was actually the very last scene that they shot. This was like the wrapping scene. This was the final thing before they were all done. And it is the Helena's birth scene, where it's Helena and Sarah and Art, who is my other sort of favorite character who's not a clone, who is this police officer who is the partner of one of the clones, Beth, who kills herself in the first episode. So that was like a wonderful kind of bookend as well. And that was just such a beautiful scene. All of them kind of crying.
That was the scene when I just started sobbing.
That was just, I was watching it at work, and I had to kind of gather my thoughts together, because that was, very emotional, especially when you really, good science fiction like this, you really connect with these characters. I think in a way that's different from other shows. I'm not really sure why. Maybe that's just me being, showing my inner nerd. But there is something about shows like this where you really I don't know, I lose it more than, I don't know, on, other critically acclaimed shows. But, as I said before, Emma, this season is a little bit different. And I guess, we were talking about this off air too, and I hate this term, but, trigger warning. We are going to be talking about...
I was going to give a trigger warning. Trigger warning to everyone listening. This is a show about feminism, so if that bothers you, I don't know, go, jump in a ditch or something.
Yeah.
And, that is probably not for you, you can watch Entourage or some other shit show. About all men.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
This is essentially a show, mainly about women. And also, and I guess another trigger warning. This is a very, pro LGBTQ type of a show. Lots of gay characters. There's a trans character at one point. So yeah, I guess if you can't handle that, I guess go watch Entourage or something. But,
yeah. Or Family Guy. I'm sure that's for you out there.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Family Guy or something is more your pace. But in a lot of ways, this show is groundbreaking in its sort of attempt at being this sort of feminist masterpiece, or just a women centric show that we really don't get a lot of that on mainstream television at all. And this show in particular definitely passes the Bechdel test. Which is
every episode, every scene passes the Bechdel test.
And people who don't know, the Bechdel test is a work of fiction featuring two women talking to each other about something other than a man. So yeah, that is basically almost every single scene in this the show. And let's not kid ourselves too. There are evil women on the show.
There
not
are,
everybody
but I feel like it's also
is a positive female portrait.
Yeah,
but
they're not at all. And I think that even Sarah, you could say, doesn't start out as a positive force for good. But I think the thing that's amazing about this show is it is a show about women, and it's also not a show about them fighting each other all the time. It's also about their relationships, and not just about their sort of science fiction relationships. It's also about their family lives, their health, their ideas, their relationships, and it's just amazing seeing that. It's crazy, and it's just crazy that it's only one actress doing all of that.
Yeah. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention too that Catherine Alexander plays off of Tatiana Maslany. So every scene where there's two report twins, this other actress, Catherine Alexander, who has a small role as a Prolethean cult member in one of the seasons, but she plays off of Tatiana Maslany, and she is also fantastic, amazing.
Yeah.
Especially for an actress that basically gets no screen time. She's because they obviously they digitally edit her out and then put in Tatiana Maslany. But so again, just the sheer commitment when the two clones are fighting one another, or they're in the same room, when there's three clones. They did a scene in one of the seasons. there are a couple of scenes where you get all four of them together, and just the logistics of filming that is insane. But talk a little bit more about this show again as a sort of I would say is sort of a hallmark in terms of a feminist portrayal in television. And again, too, this is when we've got Handmaidens Tale, which seems to kind of have and I haven't seen it. I haven't read the book, although I am a big fan of Margaret Atwood. But Handmaidens Tale seems to be the feminist show of the moment. Obviously, there's lots of protesters go to Trump rallies dressed like the handmaidens. And I guess what's your take on say Handmaidens Tale versus Orphan Black?
So I read the book, and I think it's a very important book for a lot of people to read. And and I saw the show. I couldn't finish it. I was so bored. I know, like, I think it's, I felt that the show is also, I had a lot of issues with it. I thought that it really underplayed so many of the main themes in the book. I thought that the fact that they did blind casting was more of a way of not offending people, which is fine, but it's also like, that's not, oh, so like, it's a world where we subjugate women to wombs, but we're so totally over racism. Like, fuck, that's not fucking true. That doesn't exist ever. Like, that's almost like worse than like if we just were all racist.
Right.
But I thought it was also just so heavy-handed and just really, I didn't think that there was any real humanity in a lot of the characters, where in this show there is so much humanity. And it also is, that's a show that is just basically trying to talk about a lot of the things that Orphan Black talks about, but they don't talk about it necessarily they're not walking wombs. They're walking property of corporations. And I do think that the overarching theme of the show is about not just mostly women's, but I think just people's right to their own bodies, autonomy to their own biology. And I think that Handmaidens Tale did that, but without any real kind of, there wasn't really anything like that interesting. It was like, yeah, this world sucks. Like, Gilead sucks. I get it. I also am like a little bit grossed out that like Elizabeth Moss, that we're all kind of claiming that she's this like great hero. And she's also in a misogynistic cult that also removes the choice for many women.
No, I know.
Forcing abortion is also just as wrong as forcing women to give birth to babies. So I think that I had a lot of issue with that.
No, I know that of course jumped out to me when I saw that she was cast in Handmaidens Tale, and we spoke about it last week on the show with Jeffrey Augustine, and he mentioned that Elizabeth Moss walked out of the Television Critics Association award ceremony when Leah Remini got her award for Best Reality Show. But yeah, there is something sort of bizarre about propping up Elizabeth Moss as some sort of feminist hero when she's basically in this cult run by a psychotic man who locked his wife away in an undisclosed location on a Scientology base because he had to keep her quiet from talking about things. And again, too, a cult that forces women to get abortions, which covers up child abuse. It's kind of hard to take it seriously. And I did want to kind of, like you were saying, touch on that too. I mean, if people are like, oh no, I'm not going to watch some, feminazi show, Orphan Black really doesn't like hit you over the head with this sort of stuff. There are obviously moments where they're fairly direct, as to what they're saying.
And I think that's granted. There's a time, I have no issue with when they're a little heavy-handed. On it. And I think it's also, it's done in a way where essentially the feminist aspect of it is really kind of irrelevant. It's more just that it happens to be a show featuring mostly women. But I will say on the flip side of that, there are there are masculine characters. Art is a true man, in the most definitely.
literal sense.
And I think even all the male characters, I love Felix, who's Sarah's foster brother, who's just this, he's even a character that I feel like we don't see in television. We'll see, kind of the fun gay dads that are, kind of everyone likes them, or, the, overly, kind of promiscuous gay man, which you don't even really see in television as much anymore. But I feel like Felix he's this artist, he's funny. He also, gets shit done when he needs to. If you, he's incredibly funny, and I feel like he's just a character that, we don't see characters like him, and we don't see characters like him also sort of succeed. We usually see them, get beat up, and it's really nice that that's not... killed. Yeah, they get killed, yeah. And, it's sort of oh, look how hard it is for me. And it's no, he's this, incredibly charming, charismatic, but also kind of tough, character. And and he just plays off of all of the other characters so well. Like, I love him and Art, the detective's relationship together. Like, when they kind of, like, become kind of, like, partners a little bit.
That's probably my favorite, couple that I like to ship is Art and Felix.
Yeah.
No, what were you saying, Emma? Go ahead.
No, and I think that's what's so amazing is these characters. It's a show that it's almost like it's a feminist show mainly because it's a show about women, and if it was a show about men, we wouldn't say anything. We'd be like, this is an awesome show. But it would be, I think that because it's about women, it brings up all of these issues that a show about men wouldn't bring up. And that I don't think any of these relationships that are so powerful would exist. I also don't think that you would have the type of fans and just the diverse group of fans in this show. I know that there's a lot of like very young women, girls love this show. Obviously a huge LGBTQ community loves. I think that's because it is a show that kind of, it represents everyone. And
we should mention Art is black. There are actually, more black main characters in this show than in any other kind of mainstream show, science fiction or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, very diverse, a big cat. And again, too, that's what I actually like about it is that it's ostensibly a science fiction conspiracy thriller that just happened to have more women than men. But I was actually really fascinated. I'd love to get your take on this too, because I can already hear people kind of groaning, "Oh my God!" and there is a scene in the final season where it's a flashback of Sarah and her foster mother, Mrs. S, and they're outside of a Planned Parenthood office or whatever building in downtown Toronto. And you clearly see Planned Parenthood in the background. So they're, obviously they're making somewhat of a political statement there. And I think the knee-jerk reaction is, oh yeah, she's going to go get an abortion. But of course Sarah doesn't. Which is, I don't know, quote unquote conservative value to take, not to abort her child. So, I mean, what did you make of that? Because I thought that was a really they didn't have to put that in, but they do.
No, I think that it was a really amazing scene where it shows, and I think that S's lines, and it's the most, personal choice a woman makes, and that's true. It's a choice that a woman makes, not, Mike Pence. And I thought it was a really realistic scene. It felt really real. I wish that, I think that it's not, and it wasn't, it felt very real. I think the only time that an abortion should have happened in television was in the last season of Girls, because no one should have to come at Lena Dunham. It's just me being a bitch.
No, that's okay. I'm not a fan of Lena Dunham. So.
Yeah. Orphan Black is the anti-girls. Imagine a show where there's women that are actually kind of cool and get shit done and aren't brats. Like that.
Or just all rich celebrities.
Yeah, they're not all
children of celebrities.
But yeah, I thought it was a really good scene. I felt like it was what the reality of that is like, and it's not necessarily sad or life-changing. It's not, and it's, it was Sarah, and I think a lot of it too is also Sarah being defiant, and Sarah, who's someone that when you look at her life and when you think about it, you're like, you probably should, I'm
right.
not going to make that decision for you, but you're kind of a grifter, you don't really, have too much of a, moral compass going in either direction. You kind of rely on your foster mother still. Maybe this isn't a bad decision. And I think F has I loved her scene where she didn't say that, but she was basically it's your decision, but do you really want to raise a child in this world?
And when we first see Sarah, she's basically robbed her drug dealer boyfriend of a pound of coke that she's trying to sell.
Who was a great character.
And of course, Sarah is a big cokehead. We find out later, or was in her past. So it's it is the kind of should you raise it? And then ultimately Sarah abandons her daughter later on. But in an odd way, I found that whole sequence, and then the flashbacks to Sarah giving birth is like oddly kind of like a pro-life, or not pro-life per se, but
I don't think it's
the beauty of life.
It's still pro-choice. I think that's what people need to stop. Kind of pro-choice doesn't just mean pro-abortion. It means like deciding for yourself, and I think that was a scene that showed it. I think that it was, and I like that it was a Planned Parenthood. It wasn't just some nameless clinic. They showed, this is a place that offers that also offers women's health as well. And I thought that it was a really well done, way of showing that. And I thought that, and there's even a scene where Sarah does mention that she has had an abortion before.
That's right.
And that so I think that it showed, sort of the layers of this issue. And so much of the show is about women's right to their bodies. And abortion is sort of the most obvious cause of that, but there are so many. And I think that just, unfortunately, politicians and arch conservative Christians in this country, they only sort of focus on abortion, but that's not necessarily what women's rights to their bodies is only representing. And I think Orphan Black does a great job of showing, it just basically means, you have a right to, know what your medical history is. You have a right to know, where you come from. And a big sort of, reveal in the first season is when they find out that they are patented. They are synthetic DNA that is patented, and just sort of how horrific that would feel, to not even own your own body. And I think that is, what a lot of people feel like.
No, I think that's a great point, too, is that it takes, like you said, the knee-jerk reaction is to be like, abortion. Yeah, that's what this is all about. And again, too, I like your sort of comment there, too, pro-choice can mean the choice to have your child. But, that aside, I think one of the beauties of Orphan Black in sort of talking about this sort of, rights to choose, rights over your body is portrayed in the fact that, we find out that they're essentially property by this shadowy corporation, with, government ties and, ties to this sort of, occultic, transhumanist organization, which we'll get into the whole transhumanism in a little bit. But I think that is a wonderful way of talking about the whole idea of having freedom, of your body, freedom of, your medical history, the freedom to not be experimented on. None of them really chose any of this. And again, that's a value that people on both sides of the aisle should be concerned about, experimenting on people. Again, we don't have to get into all the specifics, but, if you're, this could mean, forced vaccinations, or this could mean, human cloning. There's so many sort of,
or even just,
elements.
It wasn't that long ago that Hispanic women were sterilized, in the 60s they were. It's, forced sterilization happens. There's been reports of it happening in prisons, women's prisons. That is truly removing any power that you have. And, that is just this incredibly scary thought. I don't know, I don't really know if men feel that the same way. I think that, men kind of do travel in this world and float in this world like they are kind of free citizens. And, you don't, let's be real, you don't have to spend nearly as much money, just on your health as women do. That frees up a lot of time and a lot of money. And I think that, that kind of, it's a difference. I think it would be unfair to say it isn't.
Yeah, well, of course.
Ooh, I'm going to get trolled later.
No, that's okay. Yeah, if you want to troll us, you can direct all your comments at me. Because I'm even worse, because I'm the man letting the feminazi on my show.
Yeah, I know, you're letting the woman speak. You should really, come on.
No, but
it's not what our founding fathers fought for.
I think people of all sort of like political leanings could look at Orphan Black and actually take a lot out of it. As you're saying, it forced sterilization. I mean, it's still happening when you look at all of these sort of terrifying, like pharmaceutical companies, quote unquote, testing, polio vaccines, and then, the side effect, all of these women, in a poor African village are sterilized. Well, whatever, they shouldn't be having babies anyway.
Yeah. They make chocolate. How could they be evil? And that's sort of what Dyad functions as, is that they have their hands, this shadowy organization has their hands in all of these different pockets to where it can't all be evil. It can't all be bad. And in the season before this one, they have sort of another faction of it called Brightborn, which I felt that was one of the most realistic aspects of the show, which was about sort of designer babies, which is a very real thing. That is something I am fascinated by, the idea of designer babies. I find it so weird, so kind of creepy. But it was basically a way of sort of designing your ideal child and having the best sort of medically bred child of the future. And obviously so much of that is based in science fiction, but also like not a lot of it. Like there's still quite a bit of it that there are people that are practicing things like that, and people that would opt for having a designer baby.
Well, we should preface this too. Everything in the show is backed up by real science. They have a science advisor on the show who's I think she's a professor I want to say it's in somewhere in California, who's named Cosima, who is the inspiration for the character Cosima.
Right.
But and obviously they take it to a different level in the show at times, or they take it to a level that we're not really at yet, but the show has been praised for much of the realism. So, like the stuff like Brightborn, the baby designing, I mean, those things exist.
Absolutely.
Later in this season, we have one of these characters that I think we'll get to more in the second hour. But he practices parabosis, which is the draining of young, healthy children's blood to filter through your own. And I mean, Peter Thiel does this all the time. Yeah. And it's like, that is like vampirism or something.
I think that's what Gwyneth Paltrow does as well, too.
Yeah, probably. That's why her skin looks so great.
I know. She's amazing. If you ever want to do a mini episode just on her, like that is my other form of expertise, is on how psychotic I think
we might have to make that a bonus podcast. I don't know if we can fill 2 hours.
I just think it really is like she could be a reptilian and no one's talking about it. And like, I get called a kook, but it could be real.
Well, I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow is a hip person to go to like a designer baby place.
Oh, absolutely. Or I feel like it's the type of, I think that so much of the idea of life extension, it also is just so, watch television, watch anything, watch a commercial focused towards women. It's all about live forever, like be young, be like, everyone wants to be 10, like the worst thing as a woman is to be like 30, you have to be 16 all the time. So I think that the idea of this sort of organization that like forever life, that's super appealing to so many people. That is the cosmetic industry. That is the plastic surgery industry. That's the fashion industry. That's all of these, that's the, wellness industry. That's all of these different things that kind of, they might not necessarily say that it's through a kind of eugenics standpoint, but a lot of it is sort of based off of living forever, being young forever. We value youth more than we value, I think, a lot of things.
Well, and this season too, we find out that one of the companies that's sort of involved in this larger conspiracy, although they're sort of in the dark of exactly their role, is a cosmetics company, which is going to, they're basically testing a type of face cream to see if they can manipulate the face cream in order to induce gene therapy in thousands, if not millions of people.
They were not expecting to have the greatest whistleblower as Crystal Godrich professional
is
manicurist.
amazing. Crystal is amazing because she actually like knows more than like all the other characters in the show. She sort of somehow accidentally stumbles into this whole cloning conspiracy, but she's convinced that it's a makeup conspiracy, that this is really the cosmetics industry that's poisoning people.
And a Swedish company called Neolution.
Yeah, they're experimenting on animals and stuff, but yet she somehow manages to you know that scene where she puts the cream that makes your hair fall out on that dude's beard? I think that is Tatiana Maslany's husband.
Yeah.
Or boyfriend.
Is, yeah.
Which is a great scene of this dude getting hit in the nuts and then losing his beard hair, which is just fantastic. Well, you know, we've been kind of dancing around this whole question of transhumanism, and we don't have too much time in the first hour here, but let's kind of introduce this as a topic, because this is, I think, for me, the reason I really clicked with this show is because it's one of the few shows out there that actually, while it is a pro-science show in many ways, and obviously we have Cosima being a scientist, and she's, you know, and her girlfriend Delphine is a brilliant scientist, and we understand the need for science, you know, and obviously we find out through a series of events that all of the female clones die from a degenerative illness. And then we also find out that all the male clones die from a sort of mental breakdown as well. So they're both sick and they need science. But what I love about Orphan Black is that it doesn't kind of stray away from the fact that transhumanism is a very, very slippery slope. And a lot of this science is openly eugenic in nature. And they use, you know, unlike a lot of other transhumanist television shows or movies, they openly use the term eugenics throughout 5 years. Which is, again, you know, most transhumanist media in film or television is basically pro-transhumanist. There's some sort of a spin on it that, well, it's ultimate, you know, it's necessary in the end. Orphan Black doesn't really go that route. And instead they do show the dangers of transhumanism. They show the dangers of sort of like unfettered science run amok, you know, science. Oh, go ahead.
It really, I think, which I think a lot of other media that kind of has themes of that, it never really questions the ethics of science, which I think is something that we need to be doing more. We're at such a high-paced technological age, but we're not really questioning any of the science. Like, we're not really questioning the ethics and the implications of it. And that is really scary. And I feel like Orphan Black, what's so great is that it is pro-science. You know, like, it's like, science is great. Science can in a lot of ways, science set a lot of these women free. It's through science and through the knowledge of it, but at the same time, questioning like, just because you can create clones doesn't mean you should ethically create clones. And that, I think that I was just reading recently, not to get off track, but about, like, artificial wombs. And they, like, grew a sheep in an artificial womb. And I wasn't reading too much into it, but I was thinking, like, where is sort of the, like, ethics of that, of, like, questioning, like, okay, then if we create artificial wombs, are we then deciding who has those artificial wombs, who is worthy of producing through an artificial womb? And there's just so many, like, ethical questions I had about it. And I think that that's something that we have to do with science. We don't. I think that we, like, we don't question a lot of ethics in science, and, like, look at the internet.
Because if you question it means you're, like,
some of the things on the internet. Yeah. And that's not necessarily true. I think that it can become, I think sometimes, like, questioning it, sometimes you can be a little, like, there are definitely times where I'm like, I'm anti this, anti that, and it comes from a little bit more of, like, a non-understanding fully of something. I think that everyone should be anti-eugenics, though. Question away, but, like, you probably should be anti-eugenics.
Yeah, right. I mean, there aren't any more really like the pro eugenics party or something like that.
Yeah.
No, and as you said too, I mean, the artificial womb thing is because you know what it is. It's one of those things that like on paper it sounds sort of amazing and wow,
it's an incredible
anyone can have a baby, but you do have to enter in like, well, only if you can afford this, and do you even really want to go down that route where we have like baby factories, again, separating the process of giving life, as this sort of human thing, and instead turning it into it's just an algorithm. It's just a scientific formula. That is, that's what seems like a positive step forward is in a lot of ways a step towards this scary transhumanist world, where we're sort of cut off from our own humanity. It's like if you can have a baby in a womb, like, not that they're necessarily the same, but, then life is not life is cheap at that point, I think. It cheapens the process. And, if you can have a baby in a womb, in some factory somewhere, well, who really cares if you wiped out a whole village of children, with a drone, because we'll just grow a bunch more, stick them over there.
I think it's also deciding, and I think that's a lot of the argument. There was an article, I think it was New York Times Magazine a few years ago about designer babies, and they were talking about how there's a scientist that thinks that he could track down the gene, the chromosomal gene that decides if you will have Down syndrome, and he's basically like saying like we can like, and that's like kind of a horrific thing to think about, like, oh, you're going to try to remove an entire group of people from existing, and people that just they are different and they do definitely have health issues and issues in life, but it's also like they can have normal lives, and you are deciding before they're born who is worthy of living. And that is so much of the eugenics, or just the the transhuman movement is deciding who is worthy of life. And I'm not positive, but I'm guaranteed it's mostly going to be rich white people are the ones worthy of life. And that just is not most of the world, or not most of the world I would choose to live in.
I just saw an article earlier today. It's funny that you bring up the whole, question of Down syndrome. I just saw an article earlier today where Iceland is like set to, or they think that they're getting close to eradicating Down syndrome, but it's basically because they've just been testing everyone, and I don't know, 9 out of 10 times in Iceland they just have an abortion. And they just try again for another baby. Which I think you have a right to do that. I mean, you totally have a right to do that. If you are someone that is like, I don't think I am the type of person that could raise someone with Down syndrome, that is your decision. But I think it's sort of there's something about saying like eradicating a type of person is just such it's like, I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure I would, if I was president, I would obviously be screened for it, and I would make my decision based on that. But I think to call it eradicating and to sort of want to remove sort of what you don't deem as normal or as high functioning is a really disgusting, like pretty horrific thing to do. I can't really think of, like, well, especially too, you can be a high functioning person with Down syndrome. There are different degrees like a low
functioning, and you can be just like a low functioning healthy person too.
Right? Yeah.
It takes all sorts. I think
what I think it is it's the at what point do you stop? Okay, so we've eradicated Down syndrome. Should we eradicate nearsightedness? Should we eradicate
homosexuality?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. There's so many sort of, it is sort of, again, talking
or
about sort of consequence.
Or, whatever you want to pick.
Gingers, get rid of them.
Ginger, get rid of them. Well.
No, I mean, and that is, and again, it sounds, when you bring that up, it's like, that's crazy talk. We're not talking about that. But you know, I mean, also, let's not kid ourselves. Obviously, the Nazis were in favor of this, and they were eradicating people with Down syndrome. And, you know, they were, you know, I don't think that if Hitler had come to power, he would have been like, no, you know what, forget it. Like, if he had the power to, you know, figure that out, again, then it's like, well, why don't we test for, you know, I don't know, Judaism or something, you know, Semites. And, you know what I mean? There's so many kind of, like, what-if scenarios that I think, to kind of bring us back to Orphan Black, they do kind of introduce that, again, too, very much through the lens of, okay, we're cloning humans, and this is an amazing thing, but they're essentially now property of either the military or a corporation. And are either of those okay? And you know what, Emma, I think I hear we're at the commercial break, so we're going to continue this conversation in the second hour. We're going to really get into the deeper transhumanist elements within the show. So stay tuned, and me and Emma will be right back.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Since the beginning, civilizations have risen and fallen. Rome, ancient Persia, Mongolia, Britain, and now America. Befallen by natural disasters, broken families, moral decay, lack of preparedness and conflict. Don't let this happen to you. Are you prepared? Would you like to help others prepare? AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com is looking for distributors. Email bugoutamerica@usa.com. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, a veteran-owned and operated company. But do it today.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
And when we're not invading some sovereign nation or setting it on fire from the air, which is more fun for our Nintendo pilots, then we're usually declaring war on something here at home. Did you ever notice that about us? We love to declare war on things here in America. Anything we don't like about ourselves, we declare war on it. We don't do anything about it. We just declare war on it. It's the only metaphor we have in our public discourse for solving problems, declaring war. We have to declare war on everything. We have a war on crime, the war on poverty, the war on litter, the war on cancer, the war on drugs. But you ever notice we got no war on homelessness? Huh? No war on homelessness. You know why? There's no money in that problem. No money to be made off of the homeless. If you could find a solution to homelessness where the corporate swine and the politicians could steal $2 million each, you see the streets of America begin to clear up pretty quick. I'll guarantee you that. I will guarantee you that.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow, friendships to flourish, with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom, and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, rocket copy. 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you're just joining us here in the second hour, I am talking with my sister, Emma, all about one of our favorite television shows of all time, Orphan Black. Mostly season 5, the final season, but we've been, referencing the whole series. So again, if you're just tuning in right now, spoilers for the entire series, trigger warnings. We're talking about feminism. Woo! And other things. So, keep that in mind. But Emma, quickly, before we kind of jump back into this, tell everybody where they can go to find your art. EmmaRedmond.com. That's where. Okay.
And
short and
Emma
sweet.
__ Redmond on Instagram as well. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. And we'll have that linked up in the show notes for this episode. And we were kind of really starting to get into the transhumanist element within the show, and I think that is one of the strongest elements. We finally sort of learn of the ultimate sort of puppet master in this final season. Mm-hmm. He is the man that we've sort of been looking at, or sort of trying to figure out since like episode 1, who's really ultimately in control of all of this. And, we realize that it's not just Dyad, it's not just the military, it's not, the Brightborn, it's not this group, Neolution, which is just the show's, moniker for transhumanism. They are ultimately in control of this. But we finally find out the man behind the curtains, P.T. Westmoreland, who claims to be a 170-year-old man who, through the power of Neolution, has lived to be 170 years old. We find out that this is a complete crock of shit. He's actually 70 or something. Mm-hmm. And he lives on this island along with one of the other heads of Neolution, a scientist called Susan Duncan, who is a protege of Westmoreland's, who was one of the scientists involved in the creation of the clones. I think both the Lita and the Castor clones.
She was Lita. She was Lita, and Cody was
that's right.
Castor.
Right. So, Virginia Cody, who's this, another psycho transhumanist who we'll get to, she was in charge of the Castor clones and worked with the military, whereas Susan worked, with this corporation Dyad. But this is all being overseen by this fraud, P.T. Westmoreland, whose real name is John, but, I also refer to him as P.T. And he lives on this island, where he runs this cult, another cult, called Revival, which is this Neolutionist or transhumanist cult that is essentially all about life extension and immortality. They keep talking about drinking from the fountain. So obviously an allusion to the fountain of youth. We find that Westmoreland is obsessed with a real gene sequence or genome, Lin28A, which is they describe it as a sort of the immortality gene, but essentially, if I'm understanding this correctly from my brief research on Wikipedia with Lin28A, it's the gene that's like in charge of stem cell production, and I think it does other things, but that's the idea behind how if you were able to manipulate it, you could, in theory, live, maybe not forever, but live well past your sell-by date. And we find out that, Westmoreland is a liar. He's not, he basically just faked his own death or basically, was rich enough to assume the persona of this guy, P.T. Westmoreland, who is this, he's like the real one is a contemporary of like Darwin who
he's
goes
like a
missing.
Victorian. He was like a Victorian eugenicist, early eugenicist, yeah. And did you believe it at first that he was real? Because I kind of thought like maybe he was. I didn't.
Totally.
Assume.
I totally fell for it. I was glad that he turned out to just be deceiving everybody.
Me too.
But I was like initially I was like on board for him being 170. But I think it makes a lot more sense that he's actually quite sick. He's sort of like always at death's door, but through this creepy gene therapy, through sucking the blood out of healthy children, and a bunch of other, and then later he, shoots up like industrial grade methamphetamine to keep him going. He is able to kind of live, even though he is quite ill, he's able to live rather like a healthy person. But no, I totally, believed initially. But then we find out that it's all a lie, that it's a lie and that he's been using the cult members, basically as like guinea pigs, and he keeps them all healthy enough that he can leech off of their blood and other things, if need be. And P.T. Westmoreland is the evil transhumanist, I think, in the show. He is the most sort of, black and white character. He is essentially all about himself. He's a transhumanist at the most basic selfish manifestation. He wants immortality because he wants to become a god and to dominate over everyone, and particularly the women around him. And he uses this massive cult in order to do that. So, and what were your sort of takes on P.T. Westmoreland, again, in the context of he's the evil transhumanist?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked his character. I thought he was such a good villain. I feel like especially in a show where sometimes the villains are a little bit more, you can see sort of not necessarily where they're coming from, but there's more to them. But he was such even just his sort of obsession with Victoriana was so grotesque, especially when you find out he's not even that old and you're like, oh, you're just a sick fuck that loved the time when and you really
he's also not even British. Don't they say he's from Texas?
Yeah. No, I think he's British. I'm pretty sure he's British. If he's not, that's you're even crazier.
I thought there was a reference that he comes from some rich family in Texas. And he just took on this persona, which I thought was you're even sicker than I thought.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you're sick. Yeah, I thought that he was such a, he's that kind of character where you sort of want him to fail and you want him to get killed, but he's also so charismatic and he's such a creepy, that actor was so good at it. When you just see him in the end when he's bald, shooting up meth, and you're this is I like this. I like this plot. Can we go a little further? But I think that it's interesting too how he only kind of his proteges, or the women that the scientists that he surrounds himself are women. He sort of has been, and you sort of see like the different kind of sides of the science. Like Virginia Cody, I don't think views what she does. I don't think she really views people as people. I think that they're cattle. I think that they're just names and numbers. I think that Susan Duncan, who I don't know if you mentioned, but was also the adopted, or sort of the mother of Rachel Duncan in her early life, at least. I do think she sees them as like, these are her little girls that she created, and she's still really horrible, but it's sort of not coming from a necessarily rational place. It's coming from this kind of irrational, almost kind of love of them.
Well, I think Susan is the benevolent transhumanist.
Yeah.
You know, she sort of thinks that this is about bettering humanity, and that even though she has manipulated these, essentially her daughters, and is sleeping with the, ostensibly her son in a weird, so the Castor clones and the Lita clones are cloned from the same woman, who had some sort of,
that's a good reveal.
Yeah, I won't spoil that. But you do find out that they're cloned from essentially the same person. So they're brother and sister. And Susan essentially created them. So she's ostensibly their mother, and she's in a bizarre relationship with Ira, who I actually loved Ira in this final season. And Susan and Ira's like tragic ending was like one of my other favorite scenes. I thought that was like just so beautiful, and just the fact that they, were even though they kind of betrayed one another at times, there was this bizarre bond between the two of them. That was like unshakable. So I loved their sort of demise. But no, go back to what you were saying, Emma, too, with this idea that, PT is, he uses these two women to basically carry out his bidding. And lets them kind of, like Virginia is like evil. I mean, she openly talks about committing genocide.
Yeah, she's a horrible. I hate her. I hate her face. I hate nothing against the actress, but I hate her. When she
her death was probably the best.
Oh, yeah. Just and she is just this monster that does not view people as people, which I think is a really scary place. That I always wonder if you understand so much about if you understand so much about the biology of people, if you almost sort of stop seeing them as individual and more as this sort of bunch of cells and tissue. And I feel like she could be that a little bit, but I think it's gone past that, where she almost like she doesn't care. Like she's clearly in bed with the military. She's clearly doesn't really care about her own creations. Like that's the thing that's crazy. She doesn't even really care about her creations. Like she will sacrifice them.
Well, she ends up killing the last Castor clone, this character Mark, who's from like the second season, I think.
I believe so.
She ends up killing him in a really, really disturbing scene. And did you think Mark thought everything was going to be fine? Or did you think he kind of knew?
Yeah, the Castors weren't that smart.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, boy clones, they're not that smart.
No, one of my notes was Mark, dumb as ever. Like, why are you trusting these people?
Yeah. I think he really thought that him and Gracie were gonna, his, super Christian girlfriend, were gonna go live in a field together. Like I really thought, I think that, this boy clone's not that smart. Yeah, he's an idiot.
No, and I think you're right. Virginia Cody represents the unquestioning transhumanist that really kind of doesn't care one way or the other. Like, she knows that she'll be protected at the end, because she's in, as you said, she's in bed with all of these various factions, and she's high enough up that, she'll get the life extension cure or any of those things. But, and is sort of committed to it as, she's interested in the science, but I almost found there's something so detached with her character, where she's sort of like, I'm doing it because it's, it's like people that climb Mount Everest, like because it's there. She's just sort of like, I'm doing this because it exists. We can do it. So why don't I do it? And I don't really care what happens. Just so that at the end of the day, I can be the one that did it. Yeah. And that is one of the, really kind of horrifying aspect of the transhumanist agenda. And again, that's why this show's so great, because they take the evil transhumanists, the benevolent transhumanists, and the unquestioning transhumanists, and they sort of mix all three. And at times, all three of them kind of, they have their points, or they have their, like, I found that PT so disturbing because there are moments where I kind of began to trust him. I was sort of fell under his spell. Em, did I think
that. Yeah, no, I'm here.
Oh.
Hello?
Yeah, no, go right ahead, Em.
Oh, okay. I think that we have to sort of mention, and I want to get back to, like, Rachel, because I think that she represents at all points those different things, and Rachel becomes very seduced by him. And Rachel is such a, like, she's pro-clone, she's been raised in it, and I love the flashbacks of her childhood where you see, like, she really never had a chance. Like, she never could form attachment. She could never really become a human being. Her only real relationship is with this sort of sadistic guy, Ferdinand. And you sort of see, like, how someone like that could become that. And she sort of prides herself, throughout the entire show as being, like, above all of these other clones. You're clones, but I'm the one that's controlling this. And in the real way, she's the only one that isn't free. She's the, the other clones, they have lives. They have families, they have love, they have careers, and Rachel is just her biology. She's just, she's just basically like she's a born and bred company man, and she can't leave it, and she can't. And that last scene with her is so sad.
Great. Yeah,
it's so great. And just Felix says, like, have a good life, Rachel. Like, you know, you have nothing. You have nothing. And you then see through the last scene is with all of the women, or the sort of four main sisters together. And I thought it was such a good scene, too, that one, because it wasn't even, like, they weren't talking about, like, God, like, being a clone stuff. They're just talking about, I screamed at my daughter, my baby eats sand, like, I'm a shit mom, like,
I want to be in Allison's backyard for a party so bad.
Oh,
it looks so amazing. The lighting, too, the sort of, like, dusk lighting that they had towards the end.
I think, and that was just a beautiful scene, because that felt like when I talked to my female friends about our issues, you know, like it was a very grounded in reality scene, and you see, like, Rachel can never have that. Rachel can never have a really important part of human interaction, which is friendship, and I think female friendship especially for women is a pretty big one, and she cannot penetrate that. That is the one thing. She can have all of this power, but she'll never have that because I think
severe daddy issues is one of them.
Severe daddy issues. Severe daddy issues and mommy issues too.
Well, definitely. I mean, she attempts to kill her mother, at one point, and her only real, like, male. You know, she has no female relationships. Outside of very business-like, you know, but you know, the only relationships she has are with men, and it's mostly in this weird dominatrix type of relationship where she's the dom, and basically, you know, all these men in her life are sort of licking her boot, but they also end up abusing her as well. We see with Ferdinand, who's this wonderfully evil character, you know, who is sadly the only person that actually ever loved Rachel, and he was willing to kill her at one point. You know, I mean, he was like choking her, and you know, just stepping all over her when you know she sort of did the right thing. And I love too again this Rachel is this wonderful like nature versus nurture sort of a thing, and they play up on that because at a base level all of the clones are exactly the same. They're all their genetics are all the same. You can see with the Castor clones, obviously there are differences among all of them. They all have different personalities and things, but they're all raised together as soldiers in this unit. So you can raise them to be identical in personality. And that's sort of the idea with Rachel is, she's raised self-aware. She's raised in this corporate culture that really doesn't even respect her. Yet she is able to kind of break free from that at the end. And, she helps protect Sarah's daughter. She helps them immensely. Even in the final scene, she gives them the information to cure all of the other clones. And I was when Felix says like, you can't come in, I was like, let her in for like 5 minutes,
I don't think she can though. I mean, I don't think I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't let her in. I think that there is, she has in a lot of ways really tried to ruin these women's lives. And I think it's also just there's something missing in her that she can never really be with these people in any like real meaningful way. And I don't know, and I think that that's something like it's just gonna kind of be part of her life forever. I also loved that scene too, and I kept on thinking like where you see she's in this car with this man and Felix asks like, is this your new like hired hand? She's like, it's my Uber driver. And I'm like, what is that poor Uber driver thinking is going on?
I know, I know. He's just like, he's probably, like, just come on, let's go, sweetheart. Like, let's get to the destination and get the hell out of my car.
Crazy British people just talking about like, God knows what. And you're like, God, I would be like, I am getting out of here.
Yeah, like, I'm ending this ride right now, okay?
Yeah. I think that there was...
No, go ahead, Em.
Good. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think, again, bringing it sort of back around to how we kind of started this second hour, too, Rachel in many ways represents... She is the byproduct of transhumanism. She is the ultimate end goal. Not necessarily in, obviously, transhumanists want to live as gods and, you can, look at like, Ray Kurzweil who wants to, be implanted in a supercomputer. But ultimately, when you go down the road of transhumanism and especially into the more eugenics sort of occultic realm, human cloning is one of the byproducts, and she represents like the end result of this pursuit. And it's a very sad life, as you say. She
incredibly sad life.
No real connection to people. She, has severe issues with her parents.
She only wears beige.
Yeah. Although I do love Rachel's style. I love her hair too.
Oh God, I hate her. Her Anna Wintour-esque.
Oh, I love it.
Like she's been raised to be this like cold bitch that like.
Yeah.
And you always wonder like what. And there's that flashback of her in her 20s where she looked a little different and she,
with the long
kind
hair.
of. Yeah, and you're almost like, what if she was allowed like Sarah and Cosima and Helena to have these lives? Like, would she have been that? And I don't think so. Because I think that you do see that there is humanity in her, but it's been so much repressed and it's been so much a point of sort of shame for her. Because that's what the others have. She doesn't have, like, that's what they have. She's different. She's better than them. So it's just been completely bred out of her. So she only wears beige.
Yeah, and has that like cropped haircut. No, totally. This whole desire of being free, of having your own freedom, and that's not like a feminist thing or a masculine. I'm not talking about like we're talking about it in the most literal sense, like to have your own liberty, to be able to exercise your own rights, and Rachel never ever has that. Even when she's quote unquote on top and winning, she finds out that she's still property, that, she's still essentially at the behest of this psychotic cult leader who really doesn't give a fuck about her.
Oh, yeah. She's being watched all the time.
Right. I love that reveal with the
horrific.
The eye.
Yeah. That's such a horrible, just thought that, she's never alone. She's never ever alone. And she's always known that she's never alone, because she's always known that she's being watched and that she's, one of many. But now she realizes that, she can't even have her own body anymore. And that's dark. Pretty fucked up way to live, if you ask me.
No, and I think, again, it's a very apt metaphor for the dangers of going down the transhumanist route. Especially too when you think of a lot of these developments in technology and things, aside from the sort of crazier things, but I mean just the surveillance, they're all surveilled, in a very basic sense, where there are cameras put in their houses and things like that to watch them. And we see how that drives this character Beth crazy. When she finds out that she's, her life has been manipulated around her, that she's being spied on. But, with Rachel, we find out that this goes to a biometric level with the spying.
Yeah.
To the point where, as you said, she's never alone. And there's such a great, it's such a great character, device there, because she, I think she's so lonely all the time, 'cause she can't really connect to people. And in a sick way, she's always connected. She's never really alone. Even though she sort of wants to, I think she wants the freedom to be alone, but she also wants the freedom to have human interactions, but she can never really have any of that. So again, no, I think it's clear both of us love Rachel. I love Rachel's evolution. And she slowly became one of my new favorite clones. Because she's just such this tragic figure. And someone that it is that you want to give her love, but it's almost like you can't. There's nothing to give to her, which is so sad.
There's a line where her father says that to her. It's there's nothing there. You're just I don't love you. There's nothing to love. And I think that's the tragic thing, is that she knows that. And that, it's sort of it's that she knows that, and that she lives vicariously through these other women that she hates. She hates them, but at the same time, she almost I think wants to be Kira's mother. She wants to, she wants to be Kira's mother. She wants Cosima's intellect. She wants, I think, Farah's independence. But she can't. She'll never have it. And I know I almost wish I could just watch another season of just Rachel, Rachel glass
they could do so many spin-offs.
Trying to figure it out. Yeah.
You know what? My hope is that they kind of continue with the comics or something. This is a great show that you could have. Each one of these clones could have their own spin-off comic. And I would gladly spend hundreds of dollars collecting all of them. So if you're listening out there, creators of Orphan Black, definitely continue. I know they do some comics.
I think they did one with MK.
We've got about a half an hour left. Is there, I've got so many other things. One thing I wanted to point out that's just a wonderful little, I don't know what the word is that they use to use for this, but all of the episode titles are great. The first season is they're all quotes from Darwin on the origin of species. The second season, all of the episodes are named after. They're all quotes from Francis Bacon, of course, a occultist, and there are quotes from the New Atlantis, which is very sort of proto-occultist, transhumanist sort of a text. The third season are all quotes from Eisenhower's farewell address, the infamous military-industrial complex. Season 4 is all from the Cyborg Manifesto, written by Donna Haraway, who's a futurist professor. And then the final season is all quotes from the poem Protest by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. So just an interesting device that they use for all of that. But Em, is there anything that you that you wanted to talk about? Anything that we missed, or we can just sort of talk about our favorite moments in the series? But anything you think is important to sort of impart?
I think also we're sort of talking a little bit about the nature versus nurture as sort of Rachel, but I think also the same can be said about Helena. We haven't really talked about Helena, but she's another just amazing character, and she is in a lot of ways very similar, I think, in Rachel, in the sense that she grew up as a really unhappy child, very isolated, and was sort of bred to have a function. Like, she was sort of adopted out of the horrible orphanage in Ukraine to sort of be by like a religious cult leader. And so she's also been bred to, like, she sort of knew that there were these like identicals. She knew that there were these people that she had to get rid of and she had to cleanse them from the earth. She's been brainwashed from a very young age, similar to Rachel. And she's like a hardened killer. Like, she's scary. Like, when she starts out scary, but then, she becomes, she discovers that she has this family that loves her. And I thought that scene when she gives birth, where we were both crying, like, there's just that scene when she looks at Rachel and it's almost like, or Sarah, and for the first time you see that she, like, has peace. Like, she's at peace, and and it's just, I thought that her arc is so interesting, how they took this character that is, in a lot of ways, you think is scarier than Rachel, and, like, is. In a lot of, like, she can fuck you up. But
I love when she sticks that needle through the doctor's mouth. It's like smelling, and she's, like, super pregnant at this point, too. She's, like, about to give birth, like, any day.
To twins. Yeah. And I just think that it's amazing how she, you see so much change in her, and so much sort of like, I get, like, sort of the nature versus nurture argument of it, how she really is, she's not just who she was raised. She also, like, in her heart of hearts, like, is a good person. And is, like, a good sistar. But sistar is the proper Orphan Black word for sister. I don't know if it's actually Ukrainian, but I pretty much love it.
No, I think it is.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was just her funny pronunciation of it. But
no,
okay.
It must be real. It must
be. Okay.
I'm going to believe it's real.
Me too. Do you have a favorite Helena moment?
I have some favorite Helena lines in this season. I love when she's like fighting in the woods, and she gets a giant stick jammed into her very pregnant stomach, and she just says, "Sticking, baby." I of course love her and Donnie, the whole like strong like bull. Her and Donnie's. Here's a we can kind of get into some of the nitty gritty of the fandom, but there's quite a weird vibe that a lot of the fans got vis-a-vis Donnie and Helena. That there was like something going on between them, and that's why Allison was so jealous. What do you make of that?
No way. No, he loves Allison.
I disagree too, but
I don't think so. I think that he. I don't think that there's anything going on between them. I don't think that that's like, I think that like Helena, like, just like kind of likes Donnie for like the reasons we like Donnie. Like, Donnie's kind of just this like, like she's also like, she wants someone strong, like she actually, like Donnie runs away from everything. Like she doesn't want that. I don't think that there's any, I can't see that at all.
Or no, you know what it was? A lot of fans were sort of saying like Donnie was like sort of forgetting who his wife was. And I always thought it was more, especially in this season, because Allison goes through some dramatic changes. And I love Allison, but I don't like the purple streaks in her hair. That was like, I don't know what's going on.
That, like, that, I thought it was perfect, because that's the type of haircut that a woman like her would get. And I love, like, how now she's wearing these, like, kind of, like, loose, sort of boho dresses, like a lot of, like, Laura Ashley-esque clothing now that she's sort of, like, becoming this, like, new kind of born-again hippie. And I was like, no, that's the haircut that a woman that goes to a health retreat gets. Like, she gets, like, a stupid bowl cut with purple.
I love Allison, like, yoga pants, like, sports bra, dancing, doing, like, the Taibo exercise, or, like, Allison, like, smoking weed, and what's the song she's singing?
Bitch.
Yeah.
By Meredith Brooks. Such a good
But no, I thought it was more a matter of Donnie kind of, it's more fun to be around Helena than Allison, when Allison is sort of going crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also thought it was just a sort of, this weird bond that the two of them, like, had. And again, it's just sort of this amazing, again, in a show, where there's rarely actually all that many, like, sexual relationships. And, that's something that I appreciate too. In that, obviously there are some, there's a Big Dick Paul in the first and second and third season.
Yeah.
And there are some other characters like that. But, I think Donnie and Helena are just this wonderful, platonic, familial relationship. He's her brother-in-law. She's his sister-in-law. And they really, like, connect. And I don't know, that's refreshing too. In a show where it's not like just everyone sort of like you're just waiting for everyone to start fucking.
Exactly. I also think that for them, Helena, like, needs the help, like, she needs a little help sometimes, like, girls had it rough. Yeah. But I think also, like, when you start to know her, and there's all those scenes when Sarah's starting to know her, like, I love that scene when she's singing the Archies. I also love in one of I think it was the second to last episode where she's singing the Trogue song, and just Helena's singing is so good. But you kind of realize, like, she's actually kind of, like, a really sweet girl. Like, underneath all of her, like, craziness, like, you'd want to be around her. She's, like, a nice, she'll, like, she will literally, like, stab someone if they come between you. It's like, like, they try to threaten you. Like, and I think Donnie just likes that. I think that, and I think Donnie also, like, realizes, like, he'd probably be dead.
Right.
He wasn't around her a lot.
Here's one for you, Emma. Again, this is, we're getting kind of into the nitty gritty of the fandom here. Okay, and I didn't notice this until I was checking out some, like, stuff like on Reddit and other places, for Orphan Black. But every season there's like an Allison episode, like just Allison. And this season we have Allison sort of reliving her whole, her life of crime with Donnie, the people they've killed, the people they've wronged. We won't give away everything there. And she accidentally during this, Donnie drinks some apple juice laced with Xanax, that Allison was going to give to this bitchy old lady. And Donnie falls down and Felix says it's the weirdest guys that get them. So does Donnie have a Prince Albert? Because he's in a kilt. He's dancing in a kilt, obviously no underwear, and he falls down, and everyone is shocked. And Felix says the weirdest guys get one. So I assume that's a Prince Albert, right?
Maybe.
What did you think? Because I don't think it's like a scrotum tattoo or something. It's got to be a Prince Albert.
I didn't even notice that line. I was just laughing hearing him say, like, apple juice and just, like, fall down. But, maybe. I mean, he would. I feel like John, like, he's such a weirdo. I love how
and, like, him and Allison would get, I bet, like, Allison has her clit pierced or something.
Oh, probably, yeah. No, she's a psycho. Yeah, she would. I also love how you discover that Donnie's now new profession is concrete flooring.
Is what?
Which they talk about, like, when you see them last, where she's talking about his new job as designing concrete flooring for people, which is funny if you watch the show because they have a couple dead bodies under their garage. Because Donnie and Allison get into some crazy things. Yeah, I'm sure he would. Like, he's like I love when they're drug dealers and like just like their weird sex stuff that they do. Like,
when they're, like,
I could watch.
twerking.
I know. I could really just watch a show of them. I think that I love their weird relationship. I love how you start out hating Donnie because you just like, you think that he's sort of like, oh, yeah. But like you realize like, no, he's just stupid Donnie. Like he actually like, is
well, you know,
smart.
that's an interesting thing. You know, so Donnie, all of the clones have monitors. And they're people, they're aware that their wives or girlfriends or whatever are clones.
She's the only one that does not have a watcher because she's sort of, and Helena, because they were sort of, as
they were
children, they were separated and they were funneled out of the system.
But all of the other clones have monitors, and Donnie happens to be Allison's monitor. But they truly are in love, and I mean they are like the most, I don't know, strong couple in the whole, because they, you know, I mean they cheat on one another, they kill people, they're, you know, all these horrible things happen, but they still are so in love with one another. But Donnie does kind of come off as like a, you know, evil or you know, because he is reporting on his wife, but he's this great example of, again, you know, the I don't know, the sort of like bumbling transhumanist. He just sort of talked into this. He thinks that he's been spying on the love of his life for like, I don't know, since they were in college together as part of some
like a
grand
psychology,
or sociology experiment. And he doesn't really think that there's anything wrong that they take his wife out in the middle of the night sometimes.
No, he's such an idiot.
Yeah, and I don't know, I think it's funny and it's kind of scary, but it's also that sort of you know, I think there are a lot of people out there that could be convinced of this is okay. You know, this is a little bit odd, but no, it's for science, right? You know, we're going to be part of this great study. This is going to help people's lives and things. And again, not asking the basic questions of like, I'm sorry, how long is this? And you know, you're drugging my wife in the middle of the night and taking her out to perform, I don't know, experiments or whatever the hell they were doing. So yeah, I mean,
Donnie
again,
also does represent kind of the most of us. Like Donnie's kind of he's sort of like the everyman, you know, with just some very bizarre characteristics mixed in there.
Yes, yeah, like you know, Prince Albert and some other things.
I have to rewatch that scene because now I'm like, yeah, of course he does. Like, why wouldn't he? Like, that just makes so much sense.
No, rewatch that scene because Felix says it's the weirdest guys that get one. And I did look it up, and other people were like, "It's a cock ring," obviously. A few other things I wanted to just touch on. I loved, I don't know why, but the masturbating nun was amazing. This is like a plot device, and it sort of reminded me of. We're getting way off topic here, but the young Pope, you know,
so
sort of creepy nuns who are, you know, they're so repressed yet they are these like sexual beings. So I just love that was like a plot device. And that it was Helena seeing the nun that sort of triggered her whole life.
Yeah. Even though, I don't know if you are aware, but one-time bleaching does not permanently dye a person's hair.
So I heard or read online that that she does it herself. Yeah, and that's why her roots are coming in.
Yeah.
Because she hasn't done it in a while.
Yeah.
But you also can't clone people, so, you know, we can...
What?
Yeah, right, we can kind of let that go. Any other like just little moments, even throughout the whole series, that you wanted to touch on?
I wanted to know, I know that you say you're always kind of back and forth about Delphine. Delphine is the beautiful French eugenicist, really, who starts out sort of as the monitor of Cosima and slowly does, I do really think that they do deeply love each other. But I felt like this season, like, I completely trust her. Like, I don't have, like, I don't question her motives anymore. I don't think she is in bed with Neolution anymore, but I do always am sort of like, but you were. Like, you sort of, like, didn't question it before you fell in love with Cosima.
Well, that's a great question, because she doesn't at all. She kind of, I mean, she goes into this strictly as I'm just going to monitor this woman. I'm going to figure out, everything about her, and I'm going to report on her. And then she does fall in love with Cosima. I mean, I have in my notes, still not sure about Delphine. I did, yes, I think, when all is said and done, she's a good person. And, she was obviously working with Mrs. S, and she, was sort of, one of these inside players that was, working to help everybody involved in all of this. But I don't know. I do sometimes feel like Delphine had, like, undue influence over Cosima, and sometimes it was like, why are you trusting her? And, like, how far are you willing to go with all, like, do you not get that this is, like, kind of crazy, and, like, maybe Delphine isn't looking out for your best interest? I don't know. That was me. I did kind of warm up to Delphine. But I actually just, like, can't stand Delphine and Cosima together all the time. I don't know. I know that's like sacrilegious in the fandom. But sometimes I just like, we get it. You're in love. Like, yeah, I know. Sometimes Cosima gets, like, a little, just like, give me more of, like, Cosima and Scott. Who is we barely talked about, who's a wonderful character.
Wonderful character, yeah.
Who really kind of, like, I mean, becomes, like, I think he's even in the credits, like, in the opening credits. I think he's like,
yeah, I think so. He's at the barbecue at the end.
Right, no,
I love
yeah,
both of them, and, like, Scott and his other friend, like, how they just become, like, part of this. Yeah. Scott is, Cosima starts out in graduate school, or she's getting her doctorate, in evolutionary biology, I remember. And Scott is just also in the program, and then they become friends, and, like, sort of, like, he's like, what are you really, like, what are you really, like, doing? And then he becomes her lab partner, and then, just becomes, like, an integral part of this sort of network and this family. And he's just a great character too, because, like, he's just, like, he's this kind of dumpy, dorky guy. Like, he's not, like,
when they threaten to kill his cat.
I know. There's a great line where it seems like it's okay. I think that's when
I, like, really fell in love with Cosima, when she comes in and he's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to give it up, and she's like, no, I know, he had your cat. It's just like, don't worry about it. Like, take a breath. Yeah, no, love Scott. Scott was you know what I will say, disappointment, we never got to see Vic.
Vic the Dick, yeah, I really liked Vic.
I could have definitely done for, like, one more horrific
I just felt like there
wasn't
really, like, any, like, I think, like, Dick's his final bow, like, I don't think that there was any reason to bring him back.
No, definitely not.
But yeah, there were definitely some questions, like, even, like, sort of, like, I had questions like, is Art even still a working cop? Because it doesn't seem like he could.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like this is his full-time job, and, like, where was sort of the investigation about Beth Child's suicide? And, like, I think a lot of it was that they had so many people involved from the outside sort of, like, infiltrating the police department. Like, I hated that cop.
Anger?
Anger. Oh.
Yeah, I wish she died. She
Worse.
was the one death I really wanted, but that didn't happen. I guess that's like not Art's style, though.
No, yeah, no. But she was pretty bad. But yeah, there were some characters that it would have been nice to see, like, what, like, I don't really care that much about Cal, but the father of Kira, Sarah's daughter, he's in it for a while.
You
and
can
then he
stay
kind
with
of goes
Daenerys
away.
and Essos.
Yeah,
I don't care about Cal at all.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Em. What were you saying?
Yeah, I think that, like, but I think also in a show like this, like, you just can't wrap up everything as neatly as you want. You know, like,
and I think that's a fair point, and I think the writers knew that, and I think they do. Graham Manson and John Fawcett do a really good job of like, they give you the ending that you want, you know.
They do, yeah. They give
with
you a really
some
good ending.
Shocking deaths and, you know, some really kind of heavy stuff. But yeah, I think it's you know, I think that's sort of a problem or like a pitfall with a lot of science fiction, especially like these sort of like sci-fi conspiracy thrillers where there's so many little characters, and you want to know like everything about them, and you want to figure out like, oh, but what about this? You know, I mean, whatever happened to Art's, Angie, his like, anal fucking partner.
Yeah.
You know, she just kind of faded away, but.
The question I had for you is,
No, go ahead, Em. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
You are. Oh my God. This is why we need feminism. This is the patriarchy right here. Have you had trouble convincing people to watch it? Because I have. And I don't know why. And people, I'll be like, no, it's good. And they're like, no, I don't know, it doesn't look good. And I'm like, you're an idiot. You watch Game of Thrones. That show's garbage. But I have had so much trouble convincing people, like, it's really smart. And these are, like, the people that I'm like, you watch Handmaid's Tale, and, like, you talked about how, like, powerful it was. Like, this is so good. Like, trust me on this. And I don't know if people, I think, have bias to science fiction.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because I feel like everyone watches, you know, Westworld and Game of Thrones. But, it's bizarre. I think it's because it's like real science
fiction, too. You know, it's not... Yeah. It's like, I mean... I have trouble convincing people to watch Battlestar Galactica, which is like, you know the most science fiction show. You know, it's so based in everyday sort of political ideas and things like that.
I'm gonna pass on.
Let's not kid ourselves. There's some cheesy stuff on Orphan Black every once in a while.
Totally. Yeah.
But that's the nature of any good long-running science fiction. You know, like Buffy gets cheesy. But, you know, if I was stuck on a desert island with, you know, one television show, I'd probably pick Buffy.
It's gotta be Buffy. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's science fiction. I think it's I mean, let's like call a spade a spade. It's also just like, you know, it's all women.
I think that's part of it. I think I've tried to convince guys to watch it, and they're like, nah. And I'm like, it's not like, I already hate you because you won't watch Buffy, but, like, this is, like, it has something for everyone. There's, like, guys the guys in it are great, too. Yeah, I think that is one reason. But even some women, I think, like, won't watch it because, I don't know why. I think it's maybe because it's, like, sci-fi and it's not,
well, it's also, it's not an HBO, you know, it's like
not an HBO.
On Space, which is a Canadian channel, or, you know, or BBC America. Yeah, and I think it's, no, totally. I mean, we could go on and on about, you know, the fact that Tatiana Maslany was snubbed, by the Emmys year after year, essentially because they you know, it's a sci-fi show. You know, we should definitely give it to, I don't even know what won over her. You know,
they once I don't know if they gave it to, the mother of bad acting, but I believe they might have.
Who's that?
Given it to Amelia Clark for her.
Oh yeah, I don't know if she won, but it was probably like, you know, Meryl Streep in some like miniseries beat her out or something like that.
It's probably just some show. Just like some show that's probably not that great. I feel like that's the thing that I don't understand is you almost have to just give it to her on technicality. Like she plays.
Yeah, she plays
every
so
character.
right, exactly. No, it is like again. I mean, it's like a master class in acting.
Yeah,
and it's just amazing the technology has come so far. This isn't like Lindsay Lohan in The Parent Trap. This is like next level in terms of what they're able to do and how fluid it is. It's like seamless. You wouldn't know that it's the same person. You wouldn't know that it probably took, hours and hours and hours to film. It comes across so well.
Amazing. She's so good.
We're coming up towards the end. Again, tell people where they can go if they want to check out your artwork and any final thoughts you want to leave the listeners with in terms of Orphan Black.
EmmaRedmond.com, where you can find my work, and watch Orphan Black. If you have daughters, make them watch Orphan Black, not Handmaid's Tale. Way better female role models, I believe. And Donnie's great. Donnie's a great guy. I love Donnie.
All right, we'll leave it there, and I will be coming back next week. I think probably with our good friend Chuck Ocelli, but until then, I'll be talking to you very soon.
No rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.
Since the beginning, civilizations have risen and fallen. Rome, ancient Persia, Mongolia, Britain, and now America. Befallen by natural disasters, broken families, moral decay, lack of preparedness and conflict. Don't let this happen to you. Are you prepared? Would you like to help others prepare? AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com is looking for distributors. Email bugoutamerica@usa.com. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, a veteran-owned and operated company. But do it today.
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio, Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys because they have all the technology. They have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs, and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control out. Control is good. 5, rocket count 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio.